Hey there, my name is Joe. I'm here for the first time and I have a fishing addiction.
Hello, my name is Luke. As you can see here, this is just the plugs bit of my arsenal. I also have a fishing addiction, and we're going to talk about that today.
Welcome, Luke. Welcome. Well, then
Yeah,
welcome everyone else. Here we are.
yes.
Joe Simons like diamonds. We're back again, do another fun podcast slash video. And we were talking recently of this cold front that just came through, depending on what day you're listening or watching this. Massive cold front all over the country, but Florida to get into the 40s and even 30s for a little bit. That's That's cold. That's wintertime chili. So we're like, man, what are the best lures? What are the ones that we want to avoid during the winter? Because all lures are not created equal all year round. And so I thought this would be a fun podcast to just kind of rank them, just like we would in school. A, B, C, D, F. F means like don't use it. That doesn't mean it's a horrible lure. It just means don't use it in the winter time.
Yep. Yeah, knowing the worst is actually sometimes more important than knowing the best. So a lot of times there's a variety of lures that will work in the small segment that won't. And so we're going to cover both just to make sure that you're maximizing your valuable time out on the water. And this is all
And
again through all done the hard way, right? Buying all sorts of stuff. I'm a little bit embarrassed on how many lures I bought over the years.
what's that white thing in that capsule?
Yeah, this was at we went to the chapter in St. Augustine. Remember, it's at that bait shop, and I got talked into it. Right, like it's cool looking top water, still in the packaging. I just threw it in the canal to see how it looked, but it's got like a interesting design. It's designed to cast far. So again, another one of thousands of lures that I bought and never really used. It seemed good idea at the time, but um, yeah, I'm sure it works okay. But I don't think it would be a game changer one way or the other.
Like many of our purchases with tackle. This is for all inshore fishing. I think the title is probably going to say something redfish, trout, week. A lot of times we come up with a title after we record these, just in full transparency. But we're talking about redfish, speckled trout, snook, maybe flounder. But in general, the inshore species you'd find in Texas and Florida, the Carolinas, everywhere in between. Where do you want to start, dude?
Let's
Maybe
start with one of the worst, and we're talking about really like cold front, like cold weather, and sometimes it varies, especially like the further south you are, like even in Central Florida. There's going to be some days where even these worst lures that we're going to say worst are still good. Like if you get like a 5 day warming trend, now those fish are more aggressive and they're going after these lures that we're saying are the worst. So after a cold front, I'll just go ahead and start off. After cold front, you really do not want to be throwing top water. Yes, it can work, but most of the action is going to be on the bottom. And so when you're throwing top water, you're automatically having your lure away, as far as possible away from where most of the feeding is happening. When the water's cold, the fish naturally try to find the warmest water they can, and that's going to be as far deep as they possibly can go. And then secondly, another con to top water is that fish when it's cold, that their metabolism is at their slowest, so they have to eat the least amount, throughout the entire year. So when they're not hungry, they're not going to go for out of comfort up towards the surface to eat. So long story short, as much as I love topwater, it's absolutely like during the fall, this is my favorite, especially this one right here. We have this mullet pattern on the Moonwalker. It's amazing. But now that we're starting to get some cold fronts, now this isn't my automatic start lure. Now, after cold front, it's not only is it not a start lure, it's one that I don't even bring out.
so. What grade do you give it? Are we going all the way to an F or a D, or where would you put it?
I'd give it, so we'll say after a cold front, it's an F, but then like every day, like every day of warmth after a front, it'll go up a grade. Say that. So 5 days later could be an A. 5 days of warmth after a cold front, where it actually starts getting warm again, it could still be good. But actually, I shouldn't say it's an A. It probably should never be an A. But it will get up to a B. It will cap out at a B. But after 5 days of warmth on a warming trend, I will still use this in the winter. But after cold front, never. It's just it's going to decrease the odds of catching fish.
That's super helpful. So yeah, guys, think of this. If you remember back in your school days, yeah, maybe you got an F or a D on, one project or one test or one quiz. It doesn't mean you have a D or F for the whole year, unless maybe you just did and you failed everything. In that case, yeah, stick to fishing. But that's the good news because top water could be really great, like you said other times. It just happens to be an F during this specific time, right after a cold front when it's super chilly in the middle of the winter. So, okay, cool. What else? What do you want to
Let's
go
go
to next?
from worst to best. What do you say? So
Yeah,
best after cold front would be something like this right here. This is my this exact setup is my
maybe since some people are listening,
yeah.
tell them what you're holding in your hand.
I was keeping them in suspense. So
Mm,
it is the Prawn Junior. This is it's a 3.5 inch shrimp lure on a jig head that's weedless. So for many years I didn't use shrimp at all, and I was totally missing out. And then I started using shrimp, and I was using traditional jig heads. And the problem with that is that if when you're fishing tight to structure, so during the winter, right, these fish are naturally going to go to deeper water, and these fish have lots of fears, especially getting eaten. Number one, and there's dolphin, there's sharks, there's a lot of things that can eat these fish. So whether it's redfish, trout, snook, or flounder, they're naturally going to be holding close to structure, and a lot of times they're going to be holding really tight to it. Knowing that if we can't get our lure, knowing that they're near structure and they're not aggressive, if we don't have our lure very tight to structure, we're not going to be catching many fish. But if we can get our lures tight to structure without getting snagged, we can catch a ton of fish. So once I started using this type of setup, especially embedding the hook point into the lure, now it's super weedless. I can skip under docks. I can bounce off of rock jetties wherever I'm fishing and literally bounce down the whole terrain and without getting snagged. And then when a fish hits it, yes, the hookup ratio isn't as good as an exposed jig head, but the benefit of not getting snagged every cast far outweighs missing a couple strikes. So in general, though, if a fish strikes, it's going to expose the hook and fish on. So this exact setup right here is my winter like cheat code. You want something small, you want it on the bottom, and you want it to be as weedless as possible, and this by far has been my most trusted during the winter.
so it's the prawn junior versus the bigger prawn. Go
Yeah,
with the
prawn
small.
junior. Yeah, prawn junior, and then the jig head. There's a lot of different weedless jig head options. This one in particular is from Haas, the round eye. There's also one that's a football jig that works great too. The football is probably a little bit better for shrimp lures, but in many cases, if I usually start with shrimp, but if I'm seeing a lot of bait fish in the area, if I go into a cove and there's a lot of bait fish, but when I'm using the round one, now I can quickly switch to a paddle tail and match the hatch. Right, if there's a lot of bait fish in a cove, they're probably feeding on the bait fish, and so I just like using the round eye because it matches or it pairs up very good with shrimp as well as the paddle tails. So it's just more diverse.
The biggest takeaway I had was when we did the very first live podcast. Remember, we went out there where it was like uncut, just camera rolling. And we were, this was years ago. We felt like little babies when you go back and look at the footage, but you were catching on the fish and I wasn't. And it was just a slight difference in the jig head. We're using the same lure. We're literally next shoulder to shoulder, making the same sort of cast. But Luke was getting down in the lower water column where all the fish were. I think it was in February. We had jackets on. So it was cold after cold front. And just getting down another extra foot or two made all the difference in the world. As soon as I actually got a heavier jig head on, and started being able to hit the bottom and feel the bottom, what do you know? I hooked up with a fish right away, and that part's critical. I think so many people miss so many fish that are right underneath them because they're not in the. Which is why we're doing this video, right? If you're using a topwater, you're not going to catch them. Even if you're using a paddle tail or something that you really had confidence in the middle of the water column, you're still not going to catch them. Like only until you get down to that bottom are you going to really have a lot of consistent strikes.
Yeah, and that one for specifics too, because that was one of my favorite podcasts because I was totally
Mm,
owning Joe out there, and
mm,
it was like
mm.
8-0, I think, by the time you switched, and I didn't tell. I knew what was happening. I didn't tell him, of course, because I'm his brother. But I was using a 1/4 ounce jig head, and Joe had a 3/16. So we're not talking about like depth control from like you know like a 16th ounce to like a 1 ounce. They're like even like small little changes can make a very big impact, especially during the winter, and usually the benefit goes to whoever's getting down the quickest and holding tightest to the bottom without getting snagged. Right, tight to the bottom, close to structure without getting is almost going to win. I'll say 95% of the time, almost every time.
Cool. So you're gonna give that one an A, the Prawn Junior on a
A
Haas
plus. Yeah, that's A
weedless
plus.
jig head.
Yeah,
A plus. Wow,
feeling
quite
generous.
the generous grader there. Could have used you back in biology, senior in high school. All right, what else? What else you got?
All right, so we'll pivot. We'll kind of go worse. So this is the next next to the worst. So however you say that, it would be something like this, where this is a big lure that doesn't go very deep. So this is for those those listening. This is a Skinny Lipper XL. I love this during the fall. This has been
Some sort of lipped plug, right? Doesn't have
yeah
to be the skinny lipper.
yeah,
Just
like a lip plug. So top water again, no top water. This is slightly better than a top water because it actually does go down from the surface, but it doesn't go down very far. This at a max depth of this lure or lures like this that are a buoyant plug, a floating plug with a small lip, they're not going to go down more than say 2 feet of water in most cases. And in general, especially after cold fronts, most of the fish up in the shallows, meaning like 3 feet or less, they're going to shift out. They're going to shift out of deep water. That shallow water is getting just zapped by the cold. They're retreating. They naturally will move deeper. And again, we know they're not going to be super hungry, so they're not going to chase down a meal, especially one that looks big and fast and hard to catch. They're not going to bother. So, although I love it now, this would be like an A before the cold fronts start rolling in. Now that the cold fronts are starting to show up, this is one that I'll be using much less frequently. But just like Topwater, right? A day or so every after every cold front where we get some warmth and it's noticeably getting hotter and hotter and hotter, then I'll start pulling this thing out when I want to weed out the smaller fish. So again, 5 days after a front where it's starting to be nice again and fish are getting active. This is actually I would give it a B or maybe even a B plus if you want to go out and catch the bigger fish where you can cast so far with this. If you're on a boat with 4 people and they're using regular lures and you're throwing this one, you're going to cast like 30 feet farther. So you can pick off the big fish, knowing that the small fish, if they do try to strike it, they'll probably miss. They literally can't get it in their mouth. But the bigger ones, like the 20+ inch trout, dominate this thing.
before we go on to the next lure, there was a question in the insider community from someone who had just moved to Florida and was just asking in general about these fronts. And the question was, yeah, it's freezing outside. We're all bundled up, hit 40 degrees. How long before that really makes a big impact in the water? Obviously, wind, we're feeling it a whole lot quicker than a fish would in the water, especially a large body of water like the Gulf of Mexico or the Atlantic. Well, and I know yeah, I'm looking for a scientific reply, but in general, you got to have a few days of a really good cold front to really make an impact? And I know in the beginning kind of fires them up. What's your answer to that?
I don't know. I mean, a lot of times it's pretty immediate. I think they can just feel that pressure or the pressure rising, and the days are getting shorter, and they can feel that front, and the bigger, smarter fish will just naturally shift out to deeper water. So usually, like even these early fronts, I'm having my best results fishing my winter lures and my winter style like immediately. So
Even
so
though
although it might
the water hasn't dropped
yeah
even close to proportional as what the actual outside
yeah
temperatures drop.
yeah because the surface obviously gets it first, and so like up on the shallows like a shallow flat. 'Cause with bass fishing, it might be a little bit take a little bit longer, but with these tides, right, especially like a low tide on a shallow flat, that cold air, I don't know how many inches it'll penetrate fast, but that water closest to the surface is the one getting the coldest quickest. And the fact that we have our tides, so even at like a low tide, that first inch of water is going to start impacting a lot of fish. And again, they'll just naturally shift off. And again, it's the sign I look for just to know if they have or haven't moved off is really just looking for mullet schools. So if I'm seeing a lot of mullet up shallow, and especially like pinfish in the flats, if I'm seeing flashes in the grass, then okay, like everything's cool. We can stay shallow. But usually it's pretty quick. After one or two big fronts, a lot of life will just shift off the shallows and move deep. But sometimes, especially early season, they'll be quick to come back after 3-4 days of warmth.
Cool. All right. What's the next lure?
So next best. So this is back on the best would be the 2.0. This is a 3.5-inch paddle tail. The first one I mentioned, the shrimp lure. I just like the shrimp better because it can be fished slower. It just has a very lifelike profile. So a fish that's lethargic and not willing to really move much can eat it on a very slow retrieve, or sometimes even like sitting on the bottom. This is one that's a bait fish imitation, and it has that tail that wobbles, this little paddle tail, and it's just a smaller profile. It can be slowly bounced along the bottom. It just needs to be fished a little bit faster than the prawn. So on extreme cold, I don't like this quite as much. We'll give it a minus. But again, this will have an advantage after a couple of days of warmth, where now you can fish it a little bit faster than a shrimp lure, and that tail will help it attract the fish's attention a little bit better. It gives off a little bit of vibration. So once it starts warming up just a little bit, or if they're not quite totally in cold mode, then this would be an easy go.
So this is the Slam Shady 2.0. It's a little paddle tail, scented, rigged on a jig head in general.
Yeah, yeah, jig heads. So for most of the year, I don't have any weighted hooks here. Oh, actually, I have one. So for a lot of the year, I like these Helix hooks, but in the wintertime, I hang these up for a lot of the season, other than when we have a few days of warmth. So yeah, jig head. And the cool thing about these 2.0 lures is that they can be rigged on pretty much any type of jig head. Like I mentioned before, this weedless one fits perfectly, and then lots of jig heads. The cool thing about salt plastics is, especially the plastisol type like these, is you can rig them on pretty much anything. So whatever jig head you have around, I like it. I usually go with a 1/4 ounce as my go-to for fishing, say 4 to like 8 feet of water. And then if I'm going deeper than that, then I'll go to like a 1/2 ounce or something like that, where I know I can not have to waste time waiting on it to get to the bottom.
All right, cool. Before we go to the next one, we have some mail from an audience member. Jake asked, Luke, I've noticed you have had that same orange Columbia jacket since you started the company 10 years ago, and probably before that. I heard you recently sold the company. I'm hoping they paid you enough to get you a new jacket fleece.
It's kind of, you can't get rid of a lucky jacket. It's a
How old
pretty.
is that thing, dude?
Yeah, I was actually wondering if you're gonna say something, because there's actually video proof of this thing being 10 years old. Because on year one we took Chris Old out, and I remember that was my first day where I used bright yellow braid, and I was like, and we took Chris Old, and like he won a cooler, and anyhow we ended up having a really good day, and I was like, okay, this thing's at least 10 years old, but it's in great shape. Sure. Feast your eyes, feast your eyes on this. It's in good shape. I really doubt that was a question from from an
Oh,
audience.
thank you, Jake, for asking that question. You look like a little Dr. Juice stain over here, but it's still holding up
Yeah.
for, I'm guessing it's 12 years. You probably had it before we even started Salt Strong.
I would venture to say it's 15.
Nice.
I think I had it way before Salt.
Nice. Well,
All right.
stick with what you know.
Yep. So next one, as far as lures to avoid after cold fronts, and this is kind of the same premise. This is a wake bait. I've become a big fan of wake bait style lures. Like Matt and the Yak is the one who really kind of talked me into starting to use them, because he's winning multiple tournaments with this style lure. It is just great, and if you're new to it, it's a big buoyant plug. Should say big. It's only like 3 inches long, but it's it's
It's
it's
fat.
thick. You can probably see how wide it is. It's very buoyant, and it has a flat bill on the front, so it gives off, and it has some deep rattles in there. So it's up at the surface, giving off a ton of vibration, and so when fish are aggressive, they come up and nail it. They can feel it from a long ways off, and they'll hunt it down and nail it. After cold fronts, we have already talked about it. That's not what fish are going to be doing, and so knowing that, this is one to hang up for most of the season. I'll be hanging this up till probably late spring, to be honest.
Mm. But
But
so how about this is an F then if you're not even touching it, huh?
yeah, I'll say this will be an F. Because even when the at least an F for like the areas that I fish, where it's best is when fish are number one are pretty aggressive, and number two the water's churned and or murky, ideally both. And in general, the wintertime fishery, I fish a lot of grassy bays, and so during the winter, a lot of just that floating stuff in the water dies, so the water's at its clearest.
Mhm.
So given that, even if the water's churned up, it's so clear that lures like that can sometimes be too much. Especially like I fish a lot of Tampa Bay and Charlotte Harbor. they're high pressure zones, and so something that's so far off the normal spectrum, it'll, instead of attracting the fish where they can sense something and check it out, a pressure zone will feel or hear something different and be spooked. They're going the other direction. So I'll give that one an F.
Mm.
Winter season F.
All right. Have we got any B's and C's? It's you're
Yeah, we're
an
working on it.
interesting grader. It's either an A or an F.
Yeah, that's why we're going. We're starting at the spectrums, right? Remember?
Okay.
All right. So next one, we'll go. We'll go to the prawn original. So this is the bigger one. Again, shrimp lures are just excellent. A lot of the bait fish are just not as prevalent during the wintertime, so shrimp becomes a major forage. I like the junior one, which is the smaller one, best. But this original, the OG, can still pack a punch during the wintertime as well. And it's particularly good if you're trophy hunting. So the smaller one will always catch the most fish and sometimes the biggest during the winter. But if you're going after just the bigger fish, the bigger lure is going to weed out like the mangrove snapper and the smaller trout and like the rat reds. It'll weed out a lot of those and just increase the odds of the bigger fish that if it's gonna exert any energy, it might as well get something a little bit bigger. So same thing as rigging, jig heads, weedless on the bottom. But again, after some cold fronts, this is very good for putting on the the weightless or the weighted hooks and like covering like shallow potholes on a grass flat or skipping up under mangroves. This is a very good skipping lure. So this has better skippability than the prawn. So for skipping under structure, I throw this over the junior. Overall, B plus.
Okay. Okay. Fair.
One of the
Fair.
B's.
All right. What else you got?
All right, man. I got a bunch of them here. All right, so we'll combine them just so we don't go too long. And this would be another on the avoid spectrum. I'll do it in this order. So this is the wake mullet on the bottom and the skinny lipper original on the top. So the wake mullet is the next level down from the actual a true wake bait. This is more like a shallow running crank lure, and so is the skinny lipper. And both of these, the wake mullet is 3.5 inches, and the skinny lipper is 4 inches. So again, great during the fall and spring and summer. But now that the fish are going to be mostly on the bottom and not very aggressive, these will be ones that I hang up for most of the time. That being said, after the cold fronts, I'll bring these out because they just cast farther. When the fish start getting aggressive in between the fronts, these will cast farther and they weed out the smaller fish. Like even like 18-inch red kind of has, or I should say, underslot red has a hard time, sucking down the skinny lipper. So it'll be up there messing with it, missing, and then a bigger fish will come see the commotion and get it. So as far as these ranking, I'll give the wake mullet a D, which is a shallow running crank lure, but I'll give the skinny lipper a C. So this has just better darting action. It has a more natural look in its sight generated strikes versus this shallow running crank lure that's more vibration focused. And as I mentioned before, once the water gets clear, the vibration importance goes away, and sometimes as a deterrent. And a lure like this, like the skinny lipper original, 4 inches, good looking natural darts with a little bit of noise, but not too much, has an advantage. I've had some really good days in the winter with this, but it's always after days after the cold front.
And when the sun is up,
Sun is up and
warming
just
up
on a
our
warming trend.
lives.
'Cause even when it's
Cool.
cold, if it goes from 50-degree water to 60-degree water, that 60 degrees feels really good to the fish. So just a upward trending temperature.
You got one or two more? I gotta jump in a few minutes. The new boss really ride me. I gotta call with him. So
Yeah, so we'll go to the bigger paddle tails. We'll just kind of group them. So the 4-inch and 5-inch mulligans. So these would be like B's and C's, and just because the fact that the smaller lures generally do best, I would give the 4-inch mulligan a B, and the 5-inch would be a C. Just because again, the smaller lures generally start outperforming. As far as rigging, same thing. Jig heads on the bottom, especially after the front. When this 4-inch mulligan would be possibly an A or A minus would be, 3 or 4 days after a front. I'll rig it just like this. When those fish start pushing up shallow again around some shallow oysters, that's when this 4-inch mulligan can be awesome. It'll cast farther than the small one while being weedless and attracts a good amount of attention. All right.
Cool. And
So
everything that you've showed here today can be purchased at fishstrong.com, all of it.
yeah, so we'll start with some mid-tier plugs. These are plugs that actually can be really good, can be favorable during the winter. Wintertime is at least for me and all lures I've tested, it's like a soft plastic dominates during the winter because again, on the bottom while being weedless, I don't know of any plugs that can do that. Uh, but plugs that work great during the winter are these two. There's a lot of lures like this. We call it, this is the flea flicker in particular. Mirror lure makes a lot of a great, well, great, almost dropped them. A lot of great plugs like that, like this. A lot of companies do, but you want to have a suspending twitch lure. That's technically what it's called. And what it does, it kind of suspends and hangs in the water column with a slow sink rate, and then you can twitch it, and it just looks like a dying bait fish. The reason why it's good is because for these fish that are lethargic, this lure is going to hang in the strike zone for a longer period of time than a normal plug.
Right. And I really do have to go. I got a call with the boss. So
Okay.
for you staying on time, you get a C. Luke gets a C. Uh, we'll maybe put some show notes for any other lures that you wanted to feature. But yeah, I literally have to get off this call.
Hope it's helpful.
Cool. Yeah. Hopefully you guys liked. If you guys did like this whole rating and the grade system, had a little fun, let us know. We'll do more with other stuff, fishing rods, reels. Let us know what you like in the comments down below. Otherwise, I got to go talk to the boss man. And you can get all this stuff at fishstrong.com. If you're an insider member, 20% off everything, sometimes even more than the bundles on all the stuff we showed. And that's only for members only at fishstrong.com. If you're not a member, come sign up at saltstrong.com. That's it. Cool. Made it on time. Peace.
Perfect.
Thanks, guys.
See ya.